Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to play any possible triad at the piano. Now, what are triads? You can think of triads as the real building blocks of music. These are chords, they have 3 notes, and every note is a third from the last one. Another way to think about this is every second note, there's always one note name in between. So if I start, for example, with C, I'll skip over D, and my next note will be E, and I'll skip over the next one and go to G. So C, D, E, F, G. Or if I were to start on D, for example, D, E, F, G, A. But the thing to remember is that there are different kinds of triads, and so I'm going to have to change the notes slightly. For example, maybe instead of F, I have F sharp. Maybe instead of A, I have A sharp or A flat. That depends on which kind of triad I'm building. Now, there are 4 types of triads in music. There's the major triad, the minor triad, the augmented triad, and the diminished triad. The major triad features 4 half steps plus 3 half steps. The minor triad features 3 half steps plus 4 half steps. The augmented triad features 4 half steps plus 4 half steps. And the diminished triad features 3 half steps plus 3 half steps. 4 half steps, by the way, is what we call a major third, and 3 half steps is what we call a minor third. So we put this all together, and let's start with our major triads. If I start on a C, for example, in order to build a major triad, I'm going to count up 4 half steps, meaning every single white and black key. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 more half steps. 1, 2, 3. And that gives me the notes of my major triad. So no matter where I start on the piano, I'm going to count 4 and then 3 in order to build a major chord. Let's pick another random note. For example, an A. We count up every single note. Remember, the first note doesn't count as a step. We need 4 steps. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3 more. 1, 2, 3. And that gives me my A major chord. Let's try starting on an E. We have to count up 4 half steps and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. That gives me my E major chord. Now let's try a few examples with minor chords. Remember, a minor chord is 3 plus 4. So if I start, for example, on a G, I have to count up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And these 3 notes make my G minor chord. Let's take another example. Let's take an E. So I count up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I start on a black key and do the same thing? Of course. Let's start on a D flat. Counting up 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 gives me my D flat minor chord. Now moving on to augmented chords. Augmented chords, remember, have 4 plus 4. You can remember that by thinking of them augmenting. If you augment something, it becomes bigger, right? So starting on a C, 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 more half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4 gives me my C augmented chord. Let's start on F and do the same thing. Here's F, counting up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 gives me my F augmented chord. Let's try an example on a black key, starting on E flat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 more. 1, 2, 3, 4 gives me my E flat augmented chord. And now let's try our diminished chords. Think about diminishing something. That means you make it smaller. So if I'm starting on an A, for example, and I count up 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, and then another 3, 1, 2, 3. 3 plus 3 is my diminished chord, so this would be an A diminished chord. Let's try another example. Let's start on a D. 3 plus 3. 1, 2, 3, and another 3. 1, 2, 3. There's my D diminished chord. Let's try an example that starts on a black key. A flat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. They're the notes of my A flat diminished chord. Now, you might be wondering, how do you know how to spell the notes? In other words, let's say that I start on a C and I'm making a minor chord. 1, 2, 3 plus 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. What are the names of these notes, particularly the one in the middle? Is this a D sharp or is it an E flat? Very, very common question and can be often really quite confusing for beginners. Now, all you have to think of is what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, that a triad consists of every other note name. So if we take these notes, I have C, D, E, F, G. So my middle note has to be named as some kind of E. So I have to name it as an E flat and not as a D sharp. That's really important because if I name it as a D sharp, C to D is not a third. Remember, a third always has to have one note name in between. So C, D, E, F, G, C, E flat, G. Let's try another example. If I take, for example, let's start on a black key. Let's start on D flat this time, and I'm going to build a minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this has a very unusual spelling. We started with D flat, right? And because we're building thirds, my next note has to be some kind of F. D, E, F, G, A. So this middle note, I'm actually going to have to name as an F flat instead of an E. Even though it looks like an E at first glance, remember D flat to E is only a second and we need a third, D, E, F. So I have to name that as an F flat and an A flat. Now, if that's confusing and you might wonder, why do we need to do this? Why name this as an F flat? Take a look at how these chords look with different spellings. If I spell it D flat, E, A flat, it looks like this. Now, compare that to this spelling, D flat, F flat, A flat. It looks much cleaner on the page. You see that we have thirds stacked on top of each other. And once you get more experience with reading music, you'll notice that this second version with the F flat is actually much easier to read than the first version. The first version is not so clear right away that it's a triad because of the way these notes are stacked. But in the second version, I see right away immediately that it's a triad. All my notes here are in the spaces. It's very, very clear. They're stacked right on top of one another. Now let's continue and do a couple other examples. Let's take an augmented chord. And we're going to do, again, a slightly unusual example. If I start on an E, remember augmented is 4 plus 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I count up another 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I end up with these three notes. And E, and remember I need thirds. So E, F, G, this is going to be a G sharp. A, B, this is going to be a B sharp. E, G sharp, and B sharp. Looks a little bit unusual at first glance. Why a B sharp and not a C? Well, again, in order to have thirds stacked on top of one another, I need to put every note, in this case on the line. E on the first line, G on the second line, G sharp, and B sharp on the third line. So it looks nice and neat on the page. That applies to every single triad. Sometimes it can even result in double flats or double sharps. Let's take, for example, this one. If I start, I'm going to start on an E flat and build a diminished chord. So diminished is 3 plus 3, 1, 2, 3, and another 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you take a look at that, remember we need every second note name in order to stack thirds. So I have E flat, F, G, G flat, A, B. Now, how can I name this note as a B? Very, very strange, right? It's not a B at all. It looks like an A. Well, if I call it a B double flat, B, B flat, B double flat, that gives me thirds. E, G, B. E flat, G flat, and B double flat. So always remember to name the notes of these triads in a way that keeps it a triad. In other words, that keeps it stacked by thirds. So again, major, minor, diminished, and augmented. Those are our four main kinds of triads, and you can practice those on all the notes of the piano and get really familiar with them. The goal is really to memorize these so you don't even have to think about them at all. Now, if you found this video to be helpful, I'd recommend that you check out my online course, petersonpianoacademy.com. The first couple levels are free for you to try, and it'll really present the material that you need to know to develop as a pianist in the order in which you need to learn it, step by step, so that you can progress as fast as possible. Wishing you a good day, happy practicing, and see you soon.